An NBA general manager speaks out about Julius Randle, his potential trade value, and if the New York Knicks would potentially trade him this offseason. NBA insider Ian Begley also gives us an update on Kristaps Porzingis and if he could be reunited with the New York Knicks this offseason as well. We're going to break all of this down and more today. Let's get started. An NBA GM speaks out on Julius Randle and his potential trade value. According to Sean Devaney of TheHeavy.com, when he spoke to an NBA GM, they said the following about Julius Randle and his trade value. The Knicks are unlikely to get good value in a potential Julius Randle trade. They are not in a position to trade Randle because there's no way to get value for him. They have found a way to get him to be really productive with what they do, but that does not really translate to a lot of other teams. So that is always going to work against them if they were to move him. But they have not had those conversations in a long time, and he has 3 years left on the contract. So it is something where he is not going anywhere for a while. This makes a lot of sense coming from this NBA GM. From what we understand and know of Julius Randle, he is a great regular season performer. In terms of his numbers during the regular season, for a power forward, they're elite. Check out these numbers. Julius Randle averaged 25.1 points, 10 rebounds, and 4.1 assists in 77 games this season. So he is an Iron Man. He's basically available for every game. 77 games. That's number one. Number two, that production is extremely hard to replicate. Not only across the league, but across different players at different positions, let alone the power forward position. So in terms of what Julius Randle gives you as a power forward, he is elite. He is one of the better power forwards in the league. The problem is when you put a microscope to Julius Randle and his play, you start looking at the playoffs. And when you look at the playoffs for Julius Randle, you see this type of number. Julius Randle sank 37.4% from the field in the playoffs. That's in totality from the field. 37%. That is atrocious. If you look back at Julius Randle and his numbers in the playoffs, they were one of the worst playoff performances from a player that was active in the playoffs this year. He was near the bottom, if not the bottom. One of the worst. Now look, we can talk about the ankle. It clearly had an effect on him. He had surgery on it successfully. Shout out to Randle. I hope he's feeling better. But he had successful surgery on the left ankle. That's great, but it clearly showed you that there is an issue with the ankle that he needed to address. But I absolutely agree with this NBA GM. Julius Randle, in terms of his production, is one of the best power forwards in the league. But the league is not blind. They see the angry outbursts. They see what he does to teammates. They see what he does to coaching staffs. They see how he argues against certain calls, how he deals with referees, and how he handles those high-pressure moments that matter so much. And if you can't handle those high-pressure moments in the NBA, if you fall or falter underneath those type of bright lights, then at the end of the day, you're more of a harm to your team than a benefit. This is seen by other teams around the league. So while the New York Knicks wanted to trade Randle last offseason, I don't see them trying to trade Randle this season. Even if the Knicks wanted to trade Randle, there is not a fair value trade back in order to get value back for Randle. If you trade Randle, you are not getting perfect value back. It's always going to be one team wins and one team loses. And with a Randle trade, it's likely the Knicks are going to lose more times than they're going to win because they're never going to be able to get the value back that Randle gives you in terms of production from whatever player they get back. It's just not going to happen. That's how elite Julius Randle is. And if you are trying to trade for Julius Randle, you need to have a specific reason to why you're going to trade for him. If you're just trading for him to get that production, it's not going to work. Teams around the league know that. So if the teams around the league are going to trade for Randle, it's going to be because they have a specific reason to why they want to trade for Randle, that he fits an immediate need. And right now, I don't see any team around the league that Randle fits in terms of immediate need. So because of that, I don't see him getting traded. And I don't think his value is high enough to where the Knicks want to trade him because they're not going to get equal value back. Our resident NBA insider, Ian Begley, also recently gave an update on Kristaps Porzingis. Kristaps Porzingis and the New York Knicks could potentially be seeking a reunion this offseason. According to Ian Begley, though, the New York Knicks may not be able to acquire Kristaps Porzingis in free agency because they just don't have the cap space. So that means they may have to likely swing a sign-and trade in order to get Kristaps Porzingis back on the Knicks. Ian Begley gives some updates on Kristaps Porzingis and if he could potentially be moved to the Knicks in this clip. Roll it.
The KP era at the Garden was certainly a whirlwind, so how likely are the chances that they run it back?
Not very, Eamon, because when you look at Kristaps Porzingis, first of all, Washington just hired a new president of basketball operations, Michael Winger. So you want to know how he feels about Porzingis before you get into where he could go. And then Porzingis has a player option, right? So if he declines that, he's declining it knowing that he's got a long-term deal from another team or from Washington. From a Knicks perspective, you would have to give up assets to get Porzingis in a sign-and trade from Washington. They're not losing him for nothing. And so you're talking about Porzingis, a player who has had injury issues in the past, and a Knicks roster coming off a 47-win season. I just don't see that as the move that Leon Rose and his group make, their big move this offseason.
That was a great breakdown by our NBA insider Ian Begley. He hit it right on the head. Kristaps Porzingis to the New York Knicks can fit a lot of holes, and of course Kristaps Porzingis does check a lot of boxes in terms of what the New York Knicks need. But in terms of realistic ability and if that's going to happen, he said it right at the end of that clip. It's unlikely that the New York Knicks move in this direction. It's just because of the number of assets you'll likely have to give up for a Kristaps Porzingis if you were to swing a sign and trade with the Wizards. This is another piece from Ian Begley's article. Porzingis has a $33.8 million player option for next season. The only way he turned the option down is if he had high enough confidence that another long-term offer was coming. The Knicks don't have the cap space to sign Porzingis, so they need to add him via sign and trade with Washington. Again, that is very, very important to note. We cannot outright sign Kristaps Porzingis. It is not possible. We are cap struck. We cannot do anything right now in terms of free agency with signing these type of players unless we shed significant salary. And that would mean that we're making a type of superstar trade if we're shedding significant salary in terms of the contracts that we have remaining. So let's get that out there and make sure we understand that. It's also worth noting that any sign and trade for Porzingis would also likely include Mitchell Robinson if the Knicks withheld Barrett or Randle from the deal. The prospect of bringing Porzingis back to New York on a long-term deal may look good on paper, but it would be a significant commitment for the Knicks, and it doesn't seem like a path they'd go down at this time. Kristaps Porzingis to the New York Knicks sounds like a fairy tale, sounds like a good story, sounds like something that you want to see just so they could run it back and you can give KP that one more chance in New York to figure it out, right his wrongs, and take the New York Knicks to the NBA Finals. Wow. What a story. Not going to happen. The assets needed to get Porzingis would likely be the main reason as to why the New York Knicks do not do a sign and trade with the Wizards for Porzingis. That's the first thing. Second thing is he's going to want to get paid and he's going to want to be retained for a long time. And to give a player like that a lot of money and tie up a contract for a long time, what that likely means is you are banking on his potential and his ability to stay healthy. And health and Porzingis is a major if. So you're going to be banking on that. And if he will be available to play for your team each and every night to give you that superstar production that he was basically giving the Wizards this season, because he's averaged career highs more or less across the board with his time in the Wizards. He is getting better as a player. We are seeing this. So Kristaps Porzingis is worth teams looking at him and teams trying to acquire him. However, the package has to make sense because, again, injury concerns is one thing. The assets to acquire him another thing. But the contract is also important. A lot of factors to think about if you're looking to add Kristaps Porzingis to your team, whether you're a Knicks or the Wizards or another squad. So a lot of interesting things coming out this offseason. A veteran guard is set to be available this offseason, and the New York Knicks potentially could have interest. The Knicks are a sleeper, apparently, for Patrick Beverley. Now, this is something that a lot of people didn't expect because Patrick Beverley doesn't really fit the timeline in terms of fit with age, but in terms of defensive tenacity, He does fit that with Tom Thibodeau, and it likely would work. So I can understand in a way why some particular GMs have the Knicks as a sleeper for getting Patrick Beverley. It would make a lot of sense. And listen to the report we have here for Zach Buckley from Bleacher Report. He broke it down into regards to why the Knicks potentially could get Beverley. Despite Beverley heading into his 35th year during the offseason and following an unimpressive 2022-2023 season, Buckley believes New York could serve as a rejuvenating environment for the aging guard's career. Maybe he needs a change of scenery to get himself back on track. And if that's the case, then that statistical decline could be a blessing in disguise, since it's likely to keep his contract costs low. Now that makes a lot of sense. If you're going to trade for a veteran guard and you want to get one that's cheap and fits in terms of what your team does defensively, which Patrick Beverley would do under Tom Thibodeau, it does make a lot of sense. However, Patrick Beverley's age, him taking away time for the young youth we have on the bench, would make no sense. I don't want Patrick Beverley playing minutes that Quentin Grimes could play, that Emmanuel Quickley could play. I don't want that. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm not going to sacrifice guard play for Patrick Beverley. If the Knicks are looking to upgrade their bench with a veteran guard, I would say at least wait till you hear what happens with Chris Paul before you make that move. Because if you're looking for a veteran presence off the bench, there is no better veteran you could get than Chris Paul, especially if he is available for cheap. So that's what you wait for if you're looking to actually do that as the New York Knicks. But if you're not, and you were never going to call about Chris Paul to begin with, then you should not even entertain this Patrick Beverley story or report. Patrick Beverley, again, is a nice player. He's a complimentary player. He's a role player. Can he help your team? In certain situations and spots, yes. He gives your team that defensive tenacity that some teams are missing and helps elevate whatever team he's playing with, whether that be the starters or the bench. We've seen that. We also see him be a key on Minnesota with D'Angelo Russell in the backcourt. So we know he can start. We know you can plug and play him on the bench or as a starter, and he doesn't mind, so he can do that, especially at this stage in his career. And again, the defense would make sense under Thibs. But the timeline doesn't make sense. He's had one of the worst seasons of his career last year when he had to float around with the Lakers and then the Bulls. So it wasn't great in terms of numbers. His shooting was okay, and for his career, he's a pretty decent three-point shooter. But the Knicks don't need decent. We have decent three-point shooters. We need knockdown three-point shooters. We need knockdown mid-range shooters. We need people that when we put them on the floor, their job is to shoot, to score, to cut, and to be in position. Those are the guys that we need. Patrick Beverley ain't moving like that. He ain't cutting like that. He's not going to give you what a 25-year-old Patrick Beverley would have given you. And that's okay to say. He's not the same player he once was. That's okay to say. But he also does not fit the New York Knicks team or their timeline as of right now. And that's okay to say. The New York Knicks must look elsewhere and stop this entire Patrick Beverley thing from ever happening at all. Great kid, great defender, wish him and his family well. I hope another team picks him up. But that team better not be the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks need to avoid adding Patrick Beverley at all costs. The New York Knicks adding Patrick Beverley is not enough of a significant upgrade to get them to the next level. And at this point in time, at this stage, this offseason, the New York Knicks must prioritize shooting. One of the worst offensive teams in the playoffs was the New York Knicks. They need to prioritize shooting. Patrick Beverley's great, good little defender, that's cool. The Knicks need to prioritize shooting. They need to go get shooters. Maybe that's Seth Curry. Maybe that's Gary Trent Jr. Whoever that may be, the Knicks need to prioritize shooting. And I think that's exactly what they're going to do this offseason. If you like this video, go ahead and leave a comment below. Smash that like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, Knicks fans, peace.